Deep in the heart of Louisiana, where the bayous whisper ancient secrets, the calendar read November 20th, 1980. Lake Peigneur was normally a peaceful, shallow lake, only about 3 meters deep, a favorite spot for local fishermen. But that morning, the laws of nature were about to turn completely upside down. In just a few hours, a massive lake, along with everything on its surface, would be pulled into the depths of the earth. Trees, houses, massive barges, and even a multi-million-dollar drilling rig would be swallowed by a giant vortex. This wasn't just an accident. It is a story of how a simple math error created the largest man-made whirlpool in history. There was a reason why Lake Peigneur was sitting on a ticking time bomb. Beneath the lake, hidden from the world above, lay a massive underground labyrinth, the Diamond Crystal Salt Mine. This wasn't just any mine. It was a vast complex that had been operating since 1919. Hundreds of meters underground, massive tunnels, some as high as a 25-story building, stretched for miles in every direction. These caverns were so vast, you could fit entire cathedrals inside them. 55 miners worked in shifts, descending into the depths every day, trusting that the rock above their heads would hold. On the surface, a different story was unfolding. The energy giant Texaco was searching for oil. A massive drilling rig, worth millions of dollars, sat in the middle of the water, drilling deep into the earth. Salt miners below, oil engineers above. Two completely different operations happening in the same space. They thought they were separated by a solid layer of rock, by hundreds of meters of earth and stone. Or, so they thought. It all started with a single coordinate error. The engineers, studying their maps and calculations, believed the drill bit was far away from the mine tunnels. The numbers on paper showed a safe distance. But someone, somewhere along the chain of planning, had made a mistake, a small error in coordinate conversion, or perhaps just a decimal point in the wrong place. But in reality, the bit was directly above the ceiling of a salt cavern. That small drill bit, only 14 inches wide, pierced the salt layer, and the clock of doom began to tick. At first, only a faint hissing sound was heard. The miners, working deep underground, paused in their work. When they looked up at the ceiling, they saw water dripping from above, small drops at first, then a thin stream. But this was impossible. They were hundreds of meters underground. It wasn't just water, it was the entire weight of Lake Peigneur pressing down from above. The massive pressure was rapidly dissolving the salt. When fresh water hits salt, it dissolves it instantly. That tiny hole, no bigger than a dinner plate, was becoming larger with every passing second. The salt, which had taken millions of years to form, was disappearing in minutes. The hole grew from 14 inches to a meter, then to 3 meters, then to 10. It was a catastrophic chain reaction, unstoppable, terrifying. When the mine foreman, a veteran who had worked underground for 20 years, realized what was happening, he shouted, "Everyone out! Evacuate now!" And the lake was already pouring down at an uncontrollable speed. The miners, experienced men who knew that underground every second counts, dropped their tools and ran. They sprinted through the tunnels, the sound of rushing water growing louder behind them. All 55 miners, racing against time, made it to the elevator shafts. They emerged into the daylight, gasping, covered in salt, dust, and sweat, just as the mine entrance itself began to collapse. Meanwhile, on the surface, the disaster was just beginning to reveal itself. A giant drain hole had opened at the bottom of the lake. Water, thousands upon thousands of gallons, began spiraling downward faster and faster. The suction power of the water was so strong that the massive drilling rig on the surface began to wobble like a toy. The platform, which weighed over 100 tons, started to tilt. As workers scrambled to escape the platform, running along the tilting deck, the multi-million-dollar steel structure vanished into the vortex within seconds. It simply disappeared, swallowed whole. But this was only the beginning. The whirlpool was growing, expanding, becoming more powerful with each passing minute. As the whirlpool grew, it swallowed everything in its path. The nearby botanical garden was torn from the earth. Trees, some of them over 100 years old, were ripped from their roots. Trucks parked near the shore simply slid into the lake. And then the barges. 11 massive barges, each one capable of carrying hundreds of tons, were floating nearby. One by one, they were caught in the current. They spun around, tilted, and were sucked under. The sight was terrifying, apocalyptic. A whole lake was draining. As if someone had pulled the plug on a bathtub, the water level was dropping meter by meter, revealing the muddy bottom that hadn't seen daylight in centuries. And at the center, the vortex spun a massive whirlpool of debris, water, and destruction. Local residents, watching from a safe distance, couldn't believe their eyes. Some thought it was the end of the world. The scale of the disaster was so immense that the laws of physics seemed to be defied. And then, something even more incredible happened. The Delcom Canal, which connected Lake Peigneur to the Gulf of Mexico, normally flowed out of the lake. But because the lake was emptying so rapidly, the canal reversed its direction. For the first time in history, salt water from the Gulf of Mexico began to flow inland in reverse. The ocean itself was being pulled toward the lake. This massive wall of water, rushing backward through the canal, created a temporary waterfall over 50 meters high. Imagine a waterfall flowing from the ocean inland. The once calm waters of the lake had turned into a giant cauldron of mud, metal, and salt. For hours, the vortex continued. The lake drained, the Gulf water rushed in, and the earth beneath trembled. And then, finally, slowly, the flow began to slow. The vortex gradually came to a stop hours later. When the last of the water settled, Lake Peigneur was gone. The familiar landscape had been transformed. In its place was a massive crater filled with mud and debris. The shoreline had changed completely. Buildings that once stood 200 meters from the water were now at the edge of a cliff. Do you know what the most incredible thing about this tragedy was? Despite all the chaos, despite the magnitude of destruction, despite millions of dollars in damage, not a single life was lost. All 55 miners, thanks to their quick thinking and the brave foreman, managed to escape in time. The drilling rig workers all survived. It was a miracle. But Lake Peigneur was never the same again. The 3-meter deep freshwater lake, where children used to swim and fish, was now a 60-meter deep saltwater lake. The ecosystem changed completely. Freshwater fish died. Saltwater species moved in from the Gulf. The shape of the land itself had been permanently altered. Texaco, facing lawsuits from every direction, paid millions of dollars in settlements to the salt mine company, to local residents who lost their property, and to everyone affected by the disaster. The legal battles would continue for years, but no amount of money could restore what had been lost. Lake Peigneur today serves as a haunting reminder of human arrogance, of the dangers of assumptions. A simple calculation error, a misplaced coordinate, a failure of communication between two companies can change a landscape forever. The lake still exists today. If you visit, you'll see calm waters. Fishermen still come here, though now they catch different species. But locals, especially the older ones who remember that day, look at the water differently. They know what lies beneath. Now, when you look at those calm waters, think to yourself, is the ground beneath your feet truly as solid as it seems? Are the systems we build, the mines we dig, the holes we drill, really as safe as we believe them to be? Lake Peigneur whispers a warning to anyone who will listen. Nature is always more powerful than we imagine, and sometimes all it takes is one small mistake to unleash forces beyond our control.